Hi guys, welcome to vlog 2 on skills and capacity in speed and agility, where I'll be looking at a max velocity drill or top end speed and a side shuffle. Throughout the video I'll analyse each exercise, highlight whether the athlete has skill or capacity related problems and how they affect performance, and finally explain how corrective exercises will improve performance based on the identified issues. The first athlete we have here is an example of somebody with skill issues resulting in suboptimal force production in a max velocity running drill. If we break it down into each sub-phase, you can see in the pre-stance phase, initial ground contact distance is quite far ahead of the centre of mass, meaning the athlete will have to produce a lot of horizontal force to overcome these opposing deceleration forces, while heel contact at this point also contributes to this. Because of the greater impact forces acting through the body, the athlete shows a lot of knee and hip flexion, thus increasing contact time and slowing the athlete down, while poor arm drive in the late stance phase will limit force production and therefore speed. Regarding swing leg mechanics, initial knee recovery begins much later than heel recovery, which will ultimately cause a suboptimal knee drive. In the mid stance, this is again seen with poor knee drive and heel recovery being quite far away from the hips. This all leads to poor end knee drive and therefore limits the ability to produce vertical force. To highlight the cause of the suboptimal mechanics in this athlete, simple A march and A skip drills can be used to show if these poor mechanics are caused by skill or capacity based problems. With this athlete, it is obvious that she can get into the optimal end position with triple flexion of the ankle, knee and hip while maintaining upright posture, suggesting that her issues are primarily skill based. Knowing that her issues are skill based, physical and vocal cues will improve entire max velocity running by increasing force expression and reducing contact time. For example, wicket drills show that in pre-stance, contact distance is much closer to the centre of mass, with foot contact made with the forefoot, although the foot isn't placed in a neutral position. This allows the athlete to express forces more vertically, which is obviously more beneficial for max velocity sprinting. In the mid-stance, she shows much better knee and hip stiffness, allowing her to increase impulse and reduce contact time. Regarding the swing leg then, there is much better knee recovery and heel recovery, with the heel recovery occurring or coming closer to the hips. This combines to produce greater hip flexion and knee drive to produce optimal force and increase performance. Regarding our capacity limited athlete, for max velocity running, although there are obvious skill issues like initial foot contact and swing leg mechanics, the primary cause for concern is the significant trunk flexion, which is likely the primary contributor to these skill issues. In the max velocity stage, upright stance is needed to optimize vertical force production, and this forward trunk flexion will ultimately reduce this vertical force production and therefore contribute to less efficient running. This flexion also contributes a lot to a good deal of rotation seen in the front view, as the athlete can control the impact forces and the shoulders dip with each stance. This again leads to inefficient running and a poor running economy. Using other exercises then to highlight these capacity issues, an A skip with a dowel with holding a dowel overhead shows that the athlete is unable to resist rotational forces seen by an awful lot of rotation in the upper body. When arm action is brought into play to act as an opposing force to these transverse rotation forces, there is an awful lot of trunk flexion, showing again that the athlete is unable to maintain an upright posture because of an inability to maintain spinal stability and core stability. Finally, a rotary stability test shows that on extension and flexion, the athlete does not have the strength or stability to maintain a neutral spine. In terms of corrective exercises, dead bug variations will help build anterior core stability, while things like Aquamans will help activate and strengthen the erector spinae, and both will aid in resisting flexion and maintaining an upright posture when running. Secondly, Palloff, press and suitcase carries will help resist rotation and reduce any energy leaks associated with rotation when running. Finally, exercises such as A marches and skips, especially with a med ball overhead, should be incorporated to focus on building stability and resisting rotation when these forces are acting through the body. Moving on to our agility drill, the first athlete shows that when reacting to a stimulus, in this case the coach calling her to change direction, her turn is quite slow, and you can immediately see there is a significant weight shift towards the outside leg as the centre of mass loops up rather than bouncing straight out of the change of direction. This may be due to a number of factors, and most likely is because of her base of support and foot placement. In this still image, as she decelerates, her base of support is very wide, and although this provides good stability for being able to stop completely, it hinders her ability to accelerate in the opposite direction as she has to overcome opposing forces produced by this outside leg. You can also see that the trailing leg shows quite significant knee valgus, which could increase her risk of injury. On the other side, she is much more efficient to change direction by being able to decelerate and accelerate without shifting her weight towards the outside leg. This is likely because of her base of support being much smaller, and with her trail leg now under her centre of mass, she is in a much more optimal position to accelerate again. You can also see a lot of knee valgus, which will have to be investigated to determine if they are skill or capacity related issues. Her poor ability to decelerate her centre of mass on her left side could be due to poor eccentric strength, while knee valgus on both sides is commonly produced by weakness in the hips. Therefore, single leg squat tests were used to highlight these problems, and with good control both eccentrically and concentrically on both sides, it proves that she has adequate strength and her issues are skill related. With the knowledge that her performance limiting factors are skill based, exercises like ice skaters and double leg lateral jumps using either ladders or hurdles will teach the athlete to pull that trail leg underneath the centre of mass and cue the body lean position needed to optimize quick transition from deceleration to acceleration and enhance change of direction performance. Regarding the capacity limitations to a change of direction then, the first thing that can be seen in this athlete is on the initial deceleration, she has this little hop before accelerating or pushing off. Now this athlete she's currently rehabilitating an adductor strain, which would explain the limited eccentric strength and stretch shortening cycle capabilities to be able to eccentrically control her centre of mass and then immediately push off in the opposite direction. Although she has quite good joint alignment on the initial deceleration, on the push off in the next step she presents a good deal of knee valgus, which would flag some capacity issues as well. On the other side, although she has the capability to push off and change direction more smoothly, she does have an awful lot of knee valgus again, and this knee valgus puts extra strain on the medial ligaments of the knee and increases the likelihood of injury. To highlight these capacity issues then, a single leg squat test shows that on her right side her knee begins to drop inwards at the beginning of the concentric phase, indicating poor glute strength, while knee valgus on the eccentric portion of on her left side tells us that it's more of an adductor problem, although there probably is a contribution of both on either side. With this in mind then, corrective exercises like crab sets and hip hitches will build up hip and glute strength to keep the hip externally rotated and minimize this knee valgus. Isometric adductor holds will also build up adductor strength and should begin with the knee, and as the athlete gets stronger progress to holding at the foot. Finally, lateral lunges, both unloaded and loaded, and lateral plyometrics will help an awful lot in regaining eccentric control to allow for effective change of direction. To conclude and distinguish between skills and capacities, the first athlete in our speed drill had improved performance with physical and vocal cueing, showing that the initial limitations were skill-based. On the other hand, our second athlete showed weakness and poor stability to maintain upright posture, and corrective exercises were needed to make him stronger, telling us that he was a capacity-limited athlete. Regarding our agility drill, our first athlete had poor performance, which is again improved with derivative exercises, highlighting skill-based issues, while weakness in athlete 2 needs to be addressed with corrective exercises, showing that she has capacity-based limitations.